Breaking news. Now, live from Wavy News 10.
Good afternoon. Tom Shad and Nicole Livas from the Wavy Newsroom following an FA-18 that crashed 45 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach. And now we are getting some more new information in here, including the water temperature and the fact that the pilot was rescued.
That's right. We're told the pilot was conscious when he was picked up by a fishing vessel. Let's go to Art Kohn, our military reporter, on the phone now for some more information. Art?
Yeah, well, I was just going to tell you the latest report we have, and I just got off the phone with Commander Mike Kafka, the Public Affairs Officer for Naval Air Atlantic, and that is the most encouraging thing we've heard so far, is that the pilot was conscious when he was picked up by the Good Samaritan fishing vessel before being transferred to the Coast Guard Albacore, and we know that a Navy helicopter is now going to transfer him to a hospital. According to Commander Kafka, at this point, we don't know which hospital he'll be transferred to, whether it'll be Norfolk General or Portsmouth Naval Medical Center. We also have confirmed that this jet was with VFA 143, and it did belong to Carrier Air Wing 7, which is currently assigned to the aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower. Now, the USS Eisenhower is currently having work done on it at Newport News Shipyard, so this flight did originate from Naval Air Station Oceana. It was a routine training exercise, according to Commander Kafka. And at this point, that is the very latest that we have right now as far as confirmed facts.
All right, and that is good news to know that the pilot first was picked up by a fishing vessel and that we're told that he was conscious. And we don't know the condition, but it sounds like it's okay.
And I want to clarify.
It's certainly encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I want to clarify that's F-18. I misspoke and said FA-18. That's the F-18 that went down.
Well, no, actually, Tom, you're not entirely wrong. It is an FA-18E, which is a Super Hornet. And FA means, that's simply a delineation that tells you that the aircraft is a fighter attack aircraft. In other words, it can be used for air-to-air combat as well as air-to-ground combat. So you're right when you say FA-18E.
All right, thank you, Art Kohn, our military reporter, clarifying what I said. I do appreciate that.
And Art, we mentioned, we just saw that the Navy celebrated 35 years for the fleet of the FA-18 Hornet just last month, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and you know, I've been doing a little homework on this thing myself, too, and I'm seeing something here that says that the FA-18 I believe it first flew in 1995, if I've got that right. But wait a minute here. No, I'm sorry. It even goes back further than that. So, I mean, but it is a relatively, recent aircraft. These are the aircraft that replaced the old F-14 Tomcat, which all of those, as you know, were double-seat aircraft. You had a pilot up front and what is called a RIO, which is a radio intercept officer in the back. Now, the FA-18E Super Hornet is primarily, that's a single-seater aircraft, but you also have aircraft such as the F-18D, which is what I flew in when I flew with the Blue Angels, and they do have two-seaters. And I can tell you that on board an aircraft carrier, you have at least one or two of those two-seater F-18s, but what they do is, I believe they do electronic warfare. In other words, they're used for radar jamming and stuff like that, very similar to what the Prowler is used for. The Prowler, which is a combat interference jet to scramble enemy radars.
Now, Art, we know about the crash that happened on Good Friday. We're still talking about it, of course, 2 years later, but that was a two-seater. This was a one-seater, and I'm just asking you to maybe go into your bank of knowledge, and can you give us any indication at some of the differences between the two aircraft and how they may operate in terms of handling and whatnot, or anything else you may know about the differences besides being a one- or two-seater?
Well, I'm not a pilot and I haven't flown them, but I can tell you this. I doubt seriously that there's much difference in as far as the handling between a single-seater and a two-seater. That's just an additional person. It's one extra seat in the cockpit. The cockpit may be a little bit longer, but the actual size and configuration of the aircraft would be virtually the same, if not exactly the same. And as I said a minute ago, the two-seater, that's where you've got, I similar to what I would assume was in the F-14, and that being a radio intercept officer. So the two-seater is using probably electronic countermeasures and things like that, as well as working with probably the E-2 Hawkeye for air flight control, combat control, and that type of thing. The single-seater, though, would be your primary fighter attack aircraft of the FA-18 series.
And of course, it's way too early to go into any speculation as to what may have happened. That is, of course, for investigators to determine, and we'll follow that as well.
Let's go to Ann McNamara in our newsroom to see what new information she's been able to gather for us. And thank you, Art. We'll get back to you soon.
I want to elaborate on something Art was just touching on. I also was at Mayfair Muse when the jet crashed that April on the Good Friday miracle. Something I remember from that scene is that the parachute from the ejection was actually caught in the trees, and they had one of the pilots actually caught in the trees still attached to the parachute. So when these pilots eject from aircraft this way, it's not like they're just kind of free falling. There is a parachute, and as we're learning today, this pilot was conscious when this fishing vessel picked up the pilot. So that is the good news here. We assume he's en route to a hospital of some sort, but we are not clear on that right now. Another thing we want to mention is the timeline of all of this. Art mentioned it, but let's give you it in chronological order. This aircraft is attached to the Eisenhower. The Eisenhower right now is at Newport News Shipbuilding. It's actually getting worked on. So these aircraft were actually training today. Training 45 miles east of Virginia Beach. This is over the water, and we're told obviously something went wrong. The pilot ejected. The pilot, still conscious at this point, lands in the water, and a fishing vessel just happens to be nearby, picks up the pilot, and of course we go from there. The Coast Guard is responding. They're the support group for all of this. The Navy helicopters have also responded. They're supporting all of this. But right now, this is a best case scenario we can hope for, picking up a conscious pilot out of the water and a fishing vessel just happening to be there. We're also working our sources along the coast where we know fishing vessels typically launch from, talking to people there, trying to find out where that fishing vessel might have started as well. But we know these aircraft took off at Oceana, and they were off the coast of Virginia Beach, guys.
And once again, I'm sorry, Nicole, to interrupt, but the water temperature, as it was last week during the helicopter crash, we just saw a graphic there a short time ago, 48 degrees prepared by our meteorologists in the Super Doppler 10 Weather Center. That is seriously cold water.
And this was a routine training exercise, as Art mentioned, and of course anyone who's been here in Hampton Roads for an amount of time knows that this is something that if you're over that area off of Bird Neck Road in Virginia Beach down near the oceanfront, you would see the Navy jets flying above, and this is what they do. Even though the Eisenhower, like Ann and Art have said, is in Newport News now getting work done on it, the pilots are out there in NAS Oceana.
So recapping our story now, in the last hour or so, a F-18 jet crash 45 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach from NAS Oceana, and that is carrier Air Wing 7 assigned to the USS Eisenhower. The pilot has been rescued.
That's right. The pilot was conscious. He was picked up by a fishing vessel. There was no call for an ambulance, according to Virginia Beach EMS. A Navy chopper was headed to the scene, and we believe the Navy helicopter picked up the pilot and took him to the hospital if that's where he needed to go.
All this information came from an alert from the Coast Guard, and we are working right now to get somebody from the Coast Guard to tell us a little more information, some more details about the rescue.
To Brandon Hill from the U.S. Coast Guard.
We have him.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. What can you tell us about this?
Well, as far as the Coast Guard side, I can tell you the Coast Guard is currently responding to a downed aircraft. It's approximately 45 miles off Virginia Beach. And we've got two Coast Guard cutters. One is an 87-foot patrol boat, the Coast Guard cutter Albacore, and that houses a crew of about 10 people and a speed of about 20-25 knots. And it was reported that cutter was already underway when the Coast Guard received the report, and that they were about 10 nautical miles away from the scene.
So what did timing play into this particular instance? It looks like people were at the right place at the right time from what you're telling us.
Well, we have Coast Guard cutters on patrol on a regular basis. So in this particular situation, they were already out conducting a patrol. The Coast Guard got the notification, and since they're closest to the scene, that was one of our first assets that we diverted to the report of where the aircraft went down.
This is 1 week after that Navy helicopter crashed off the coast of Virginia Beach. You all have been a bit busy here.
Absolutely. You know, the Coast Guard trains on a daily basis to respond to search and rescue. And the second vessel that we have currently en route is the Coast Guard cutter Elm. Now, that's a buoy tender, so that's not search and rescue is not one of their primary missions. But it just goes to show you that even though it's not their primary mission, that all of our Coast Guard personnel are trained to respond to search and rescue. So that way, no matter where they're at or what they're doing, they can respond at a moment's notice.
Okay, you've outlined the facts for us. Can you also add exactly what the Coast Guard responders saw when they got to the scene?
You know, I haven't received any reports that we're actually on scene yet. You know, they were relatively close. You know, they were already out underway, but I haven't got any reports saying that we're actually on scene yet. The D5 Command Center in Portsmouth, Virginia, they're currently conducting the search and rescue aspect of this case, and they're directing our cutters. So I'd have to check back with them to see if the Coast Guard cutters have actually gotten on scene yet at this time. But I really couldn't speculate until I get that information confirmed with them.
Well, we certainly appreciate all that the Coast Guard does and the Navy and all of our services here in Hampton Roads and across the country for us. Petty Officer Brandon Hill with the U.S. Coast Guard, thank you for that information.
All right, thank you.
All right, we are following the story of an FA-18 jet crash off the coast of Virginia Beach, 45 miles off the coast from NAS Oceana on a training mission. And the water temperature, 46 to 49 degrees. The pilot, though, was rescued.
That's right. Pilot was conscious when he was picked up by a fishing vessel. We have the Navy and Coast Guard at the scene there. And keep it here at Wavy TV and also on Wavy.com for the very latest.
This has been a Wavy News 10 special report. We now return you to our regularly scheduled program, already in progress.